What's going on, everyone? Angie here, single mom, educator, therapist who likes to talk about um, my financial journey, my journey to a basic yet fruitful life, as I like to call it. So, yesterday I did a video, but I actually ended up taking it down because I didn't think it was really helpful. I really felt like I wasn't being very transparent and it is a sensitive topic for me, but it actually taught me or made me think about um, some of the thoughts that I have about money, where they came from, and why I was even not being completely open about it in the first place. So, what I talked about, or yesterday, and what I'm going to talk about today now and redo, is about my salary, and not just my salary, but my perspective of money overall and where it came from and how I got to this point because of it. Yeah, I mean, I can't do a blog about being financially stable if I don't talk about what my finances actually are and what my views of money are and how they were developed. So I'm going to try to do a better job of that today, at least from my perspective. If you saw the video yesterday, hopefully you'll think it was better. This one is better than that one was. So, um, I want to start with kind of like my views of money and where they came from, like how I developed my perspective on what money is and what money does for you. And I have to go back to childhood, right? I mean, as a therapist, I think a lot of the things, and as a person in general, a lot of the things that the ideas we have as adults come from childhood. And then we spend our adulthood interacting with the world as people who have now come into ourselves in a different way and being like, hey, that doesn't really match up with what I originally thought. And I have the freedom to think otherwise. So when I think about money, and the view I had of money based on how my parents interacted with money, I realized why it took me so long to kind of get to the point that I am today about money. And the reason is partially because this is not how my parents interacted with money. Like the idea of financial freedom, financial independence, not having debt wasn't something that was in their vocabulary. They believed that debt was the way that you continue to gain things, to be prosperous in life, and that you use debt as a tool to continue to propel you forward. And I think there are a lot of people out here who believe that. Debt is a tool that you use to be able to get the things that you need in life. But in the end, if you're not responsible, which I think debt shows that you're not necessarily responsible with your money, not all the time, but a lot of the times. Um, so it has the exact opposite effect of helping you be fruitful because now you owe someone else and you're not paying back into yourself. So seeing my parents have debt and actually seeing them like have foreclosures, not be able to use credit sometimes because they were maxed out. I remember there were times in my childhood when, even though we were going to private school, so that's another thing, my parents really saw money as a tool as to be able to get you forward, but they also saw debt as the same tool. So it was kind of like this weird contradiction going on. But even though like we went to private school, sometimes our basics would be cut off. Like I remember not having water sometimes, not having heat in the house, not having electric, having to go around to my grandmother's house and who lived in the neighborhood to get some of the basics just to get ready for school in the morning because my parents weren't being responsible with like paying bills and things like that. And that created this weird conundrum of, okay, well they say you're supposed to have debt to be responsible, but then on the other hand, they're not responsible. And I never wanted to be in that situation as adult. So even to this day, I am still very nervous about. I count my coins constantly. It's an obsession. I have anxiety about it because I don't want to be in that space. But I wasn't making the correlation between, okay, debt is also part of the reason they were in that space, that they weren't able to pay their bills. And if I didn't have debt, and this is what I'm realizing now, I would have more discretionary income to be able to make sure those things didn't happen. So if I were to ever lose my job or not have an income, I would have had extra income to have saved up. So if we were to ever, me and my son, get in those situations, I wouldn't have to worry about it as much. So I finally started understanding that as I got older. Another view that I had on debt that I realized that came from my parents is you work hard to get money, but no matter how hard you work and how much you get, you'll never have enough. And now what I realize is that's completely not true. What it was is that my parents weren't good managers of money. And I wanted to make sure that I was a good manager of money. And the way that I did that was, or do that now, is by having a budget and sticking to it as much as possible. When I go over my budget, like I just went over my budget for July, mostly on food. And the reason is because I know the reason why. We were in the house for COVID. So like my son was doing a lot of he was getting lunches at school for free with school program we were in. But when we were home, I was cooking everything all of the time. So I had to order groceries more, or I had to order out for a little bit because with COVID I wasn't feeling well and wasn't feeling like cooking. So I ordered a couple things for him, ordered some pizzas for him, things like that once he started getting better and I was still a little bit weaker. So I realized that's why I went over my budget. So I wasn't upset with myself. Now, if I would have just been frivolously spending money, then I would have been a little more like, whoa, rein this in. But, having a budget helps me like understand where my money's going and makes me feel like a better steward of my money and doesn't make me feel like I'm going to be in a situation where I won't have money. I never saw my parents talk about money together. That's another thing that I learned about money, that you and your significant other are probably going to be on two different pages about it, and it's going to be really hard to talk about it. And as I've been dating as an adult, I realized I was carrying that into relationships and assuming that was going to be the case, and kind of actively choosing guys where that was going to be the case. And what I'm realizing now is no, I don't want that to be the case. I don't need to be with anyone who isn't open and honest about their finances, because that means they're not going to be open and honest about other things too. And I realized that my parents are very much like that in their relationship with money and in other ways. So I had to relearn that, and I'm still relearning that as an adult. Something else, though, I did learn about money is that it is really important and it really can propel you forward if you use it in areas of importance and of value to you. My parents, for me and both of my brothers, paid for us to go to private school. We grew up in an urban school district that wasn't the greatest. Now, we were surrounded by a lot of suburban school districts, which back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, that was when, like, some of the suburban school districts were really kind of soaring, and, urban school districts have just always been on the struggle bus. So my parents sent us to private school because we didn't live in a district that was academically solid and prepared students as well as some of the surrounding districts. But because we didn't live there, they paid for us to go to private schools in those areas. And that really had changed, I think, the trajectory of our lives. I think that had a lot to do with why we were able to go to college, get through college, get good jobs, because my parents paid into education. That was a value that they had, and I think it was definitely worthwhile. So when they used their money um, in ways of value to build, to construct, to help us grow, like I saw that that's worth it. And that's what I do for my son now at the school he attends. I pay for him to go there. I mean, I do get a discount because I work there, but I do see the value in education and will put the money towards it, of course, responsibly. So those are just some of the views and values and ideas, perspectives that I gained about money growing up. Now, really quickly, I want to talk about how that carried into adulthood, especially with my job. So, because my parents thought that education was such a sound way to put their something sound to put their finances into, my brothers and I learned to value education. I went to college. I went to a liberal arts school. 4 years, was out, in and out. That's the typical trajectory. I got a bit of a scholarship to go. I did take out student loans, but I paid for my education, which then propelled me into immediately starting in a career profession, which I've now been in for almost 20 years as an educator. When I started in my first education role in 2005 as a teacher, as a classroom teacher, I remember my salary. I was making $39,300. And I'll never forget the man who hired me, Dr. Hewlett, he was a man of color, and he was beloved in our school district. And he said to me, I want to hire you because I know that you are going to be a valuable asset to our school district. And I hope you feel the same way about us. And I just wanted to work for someone like that. He was such a kind-hearted man. He gave me a fair salary. Teachers do have a salary schedule in public school districts for the most part. So I knew what I was going to be making. And I knew what the trajectory would be over time, over the next 5 years of the contract working there. And I did see the pay increases. You know, as you get more education, you do increase your salary in most public school districts. I also received money to go back to school and study more from that school district that I was in. And when I left the public school system that I was in 20, when did I leave? 2020. I was up to $82,000. I would have been going back into the next school year making $82,000. I decided to switch school districts because I wanted to go into school administration, and moved out to this area. There was a job available, and I talked about how my school provided so many other benefits where I work now that I decided to move to this area and take the job there. And I ended up taking a pay cut. I took a $10,000 pay cut going in that year. At first, they tried to lowball me even more. My old boss did. But I originally said no to this position because of that. And then he came back and offered some extra money. And I said, okay, sure. So I entered into the role at $72,000. This upcoming year, so I've been there for 2 years. This upcoming year, I will be making just under 75, so $74,800. And you know, it's not a huge increase. It's a cost of living increase that I expect to see maybe every 2 to 3 years. But again, there are a lot of other perks that I feel are going into this job. So I was comfortable with that salary, comfortable with everything that was going on in the cost of living in regards to that salary here. Um, Other ways of income that aid in my salary are my therapy work. Now, you know, I'm not fully licensed yet, but I am working under a supervisor, and I'm seeing clients at a discounted rate for a couple reasons. One, because I'm not quite licensed yet. So I'm working with them at the master's level, very intro, basic level under my supervisor. So I just don't have the credentials to be able to ask for more as of yet, not officially anyway. And you know, I can't take insurance. I think insurance helps me be able to ask for higher costs because people can then pay copays and that lowers their costs on their end. Um, and also, I just feel like people should be able to afford therapy if they need it. You know, it's healthcare, and I think that they should be able to have access to quality healthcare at a rate they can provide. Uh, afford. So that's another reason why I provide that. I only have two clients now because I do have a full-time job, and I don't want to overextend myself in therapy. I don't want to overextend my supervisor, as she's, you know, kind of walking me through that process. And I just don't have time as a single mom. I want to be able to dedicate my evenings to my son more. So I'm not making much there. Maybe another $5,000 a year, maybe not even $5 or $6,000 a year for that. And then my son's father co-parents. We co-parent pretty well, and he's been paying child support over the years, and will continue to do so. We have a court-ordered agreement where it comes out of his check, and that's just under 15,000 a year for that. So I'm really not doing that bad, you guys. You know, but it's taken years to get here, and those are diverse means of money coming into my household. I by no means consider motherhood like a job and consider that, well, I mean, it's a job, but it's not one where I'm provided income. But I do really think that, you know, my son's father being responsible and paying child support, and that coming into me and my son, where we are coming into our situation, so I can be able to pay for him and do those things. I think that's really important. I'm trying to use it responsibly, and I do count it into my budget. And then with the therapy, I don't know what's going to happen with that. If I'll switch, if that will grow as a part-time thing, but it is income, and I do add it all together. So about 95,000. Close this year was closer to probably six figures or a little over because I was working the camp as well at school, which was coming out of a separate budget. So I got a separate stipend for that. but I'm not going to be continuing with that in that capacity next year. I'm actually hoping to be on the board instead. So actually be paying more money into the program and not working directly for it, which is fine. That's what I want to do. Um, so yeah, when it's all said and done, after just under 20 years of being in the professional field, I'm just hovering around six figures, and 15 of that is not from my job, but it's just nice to be able to have that income and try to use it responsibly and know why I feel the way about money that I do. And I'm continuing to explore that, you all. I'm in therapy myself. I'm starting back up. I was before, so I'm starting that. I've started therapy back up. And that's one of the things that I really talk about is my views on money, because I really want to be responsible as I move forward with it. So, if you have any questions, comments about how I got here, more specifically, or if you want to chime in, please do so in the comments below. Another thing I want to offer is that you all kind of check out my website, my therapy website, and see some of the services that I offer because employment services is one of them. I'm happy to talk about ways that you can increase your salary, increase your work experience, get into a different field if you feel that's something you need to do, or how to advance in your field. That's something that I can walk you through and would be happy to do. So yeah, I'll put my actual therapy website below so you can check that out. My therapy coaching consulting website, I should say. It's in the process of I'm rebranding, but I'll put that down below so you can take a look. Anyway, thanks so much for listening, and feel free to chime in at any time. Let me know how you're doing and your thoughts. And I hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you soon. Thanks.